Welcome to Moral Libertarian View, a program where we discuss news events that are worth looking at from the point of view of the moral libertarian idea. I hope you subscribe if you are interested. Today, I want to take a deeper look at the recent interview of 2020 presidential candidate Marianne Williamson by Dave Rubin. As you probably know by now, most people have declared Williamson the winner in this encounter, an assessment that I agree with. But whereas some people have labeled Rubin as unintelligent, I actually don't agree there. I think the reason why Rubin didn't perform well in this interview was because he was too focused on what he already had in mind, and missed the opportunity to have a constructive conversation with Williamson on what she brought to the table. I mean, Rubin did make several very important points throughout the interview, but he couldn't quite turn it into a full-blown, fruitful conversation. For example, Rubin rightly raised the question of government tyranny, the need to limit the reach of government to preserve individual liberty. Williamson also agreed with him there at least half the way. But then Williamson also brought up the topic of corporate control, and I think it could have turned into a fruitful conversation about government versus corporate control and how to maximize effective personal liberty by creating some balance there. Rubin really dropped the ball during the interview by not looking into this deeper. I mean, we do live in a time when corporations are limiting free speech more than governments, so this is an important conversation to have from a classical liberal point of view. I used to be a political libertarian on and off, but it was through thinking about corporate control that I evolved into a moral libertarian, where the focus is not solely on cutting government itself, but rather on creating the conditions for equal and maximum moral agency for all individuals, which would require checks on corporate power too. Indeed, political libertarianism can be used to create a tyranny based in the private sector, where individual liberty becomes practically absent for most people. I'm not talking about so-called positive freedoms. I'm talking about even basic stuff like free speech and religious freedom. This is not just theoretical. There is a good reason why people who are sympathetic to neo-reactionary thinking also sometimes call themselves libertarians and look up to figures like Hoppe and Rothbard. Of course, what they forget is that a corporate tyranny in the 21st century is going to be culturally woke, and they certainly wouldn't like it. But back to Rubin and Williamson. I think the main reason why Rubin didn't properly engage with Williamson was that he already had a picture of what she represented in his mind, which turned out to be a wrong picture. Let's go back to Rubin's famous video, Why I Left the Left. In that video, he paints the left as those who support social engineering, plays identity politics, and the oppression Olympics, and don't respect free speech. Rubin has also been hanging out with people who think that kind of attitude is representative of the left. People like Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and so on. But in reality, the so-called left is a very big place, just like the so-called right. What Rubin is opposed to is the postmodern and critical theory left, what Jordan Peterson would call postmodern neo-Marxism. While this type of leftist is overrepresented in college campuses, in real life they are only a faction of the broader democratic coalition. I mean, having had conversations with people like Brett Weinstein and Andrew Yang, Rubin should have known better. I guess because much of the interview was focused on Rubin's differences with Williamson over reparations, Rubin could have come away with a false impression that Williamson was part of the identitarian left and hence harbored a critical theory-styled worldview. But if you listen closely, you would find that Williamson's case for reparations doesn't sound like postmodern critical theory at all. It isn't based on any oppressor versus oppressor dynamic. Rather, it's based on this idea of spiritual atonement. I actually don't entirely agree with the idea of seeing economics as spiritual, and I think Rubin made a very valid point about the lack of guilt of the individuals who must cough up the money. But you don't even have to be sympathetic to reparations to see that Williamson is not playing identity politics as we usually understand it. Moreover, because critical theory is ultimately based in Marxian principles, it is atheist, and a committed critical theory politician certainly wouldn't explain things using spiritual language. Furthermore, in the rest of the interview, you can hear that Williamson's love and concern is for everyone. She doesn't single out oppressor and oppressed groups. She also described historical human rights advances like the abolition of slavery and civil rights as being rooted in love rather than in some form of class struggle. I guess this alone is enough to show that she doesn't have a neo-Marxist mindset at all. In conclusion, I believe that Dave Rubin missed an important opportunity to engage with a good faith actor from the left because he is too obsessed with the left being full of identity politics and what Jordan Peterson calls postmodern neo-Marxism. Even though the evidence was pretty clear that Marianne Williamson didn't have a neo-Marxist bone in her, Rubin couldn't see it. I guess for Rubin, he's sort of become an example of the phrase, when all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's all for today. I'll be back next time to discuss another big idea. Subscribe if you want to follow our story. The transcripts are available on my website and my Medium profile. And remember to resist the hive mind and stay individualistic. The world depends on it.